Rick, what drove this decision from fast retailing?
None of these companies really want to say why they remain open, and it's more than just Uniqlo. Jeff Sonnenfeld at the Yale School of Management has compiled a list of nearly 40 Western companies that are still operating in Russia. I'll just tick off some of these names here. Well-known names: Coca-Cola, Citibank, Estee Lauder, Hilton Hotels, Intercontinental, Marriott, McDonald's, Papa John's, Starbucks, Yum Brands, which is KFC, and some other fast food chains. Reporters just in the last couple of days have started asking these companies, "What's going on?" Many of Western companies are severing their ties with Russia because of the barbarism that's happening in Ukraine. Why are you remaining open? And none of these companies is giving an answer. So I think they probably will have to answer before long, and some of them probably will have to cease operations there. But a couple of things could be going on. First is that a lot of these businesses probably have franchises in Russia, so they provide the corporate branding and things like that, but they really are operated as independent businesses inside Russia, much as is the case here. Another is that there are contracts. I mean, when you're operating inside a country, there are contracts, and it's not always the easiest thing just to sever the contract. You may have to make a deal with the other side in order to get out of the contract, and it's possible some of these companies are in the process of trying to do that. But again, none of them are really saying why they're still open in Russia when so many other Western businesses are closing up shop there. So I think we'll hear more in the next few days from some of these companies.
And Rick, as you were saying, some are being very vocal about staying in Russia, others not commenting at all and just sort of letting the business continue. But we did see things trending on Twitter, like the hashtag boycott Coca-Cola. Does anything tend to come of these sort of hashtag boycotts? Does it actually end up damaging or really pressuring some of these companies at this point?
Yes, this actually works in the age of social media. We've seen it work many, many times. I mean, just a couple that come to mind. Delta Airlines, for example, canceled special rates for the National Rifle Association because of people who called on Delta to do that, outraged by gun violence and the NRA's support of gun rights. Lots of other companies have come under pressure like this. And I'm sure if you're the CEO, you're looking at your financials. And for a lot of these companies, Russia is not the biggest source of business, but it might be 5% of revenue or 10% of revenue. That's not nothing. So you're going to have an explanation for shareholders on one hand if you're going to give up a significant source of revenue, but the public is going to make demands on the other side. And I think, CEO, this is always ticklish for CEOs. Like, when is the time to pull the plug? When do you know? But a rule of thumb, if there is one, is try to get ahead of public opinion instead of behind it, and make the decision proactively before you have to be the company that gets put up on a poster and everybody says, look, these guys are still doing the wrong thing. Not the easiest management thing, but I think that some of these, probably most of these companies are going to come around to that within a fairly short period of time.
And Rick, while we have you, for many businesses, their investors have become accustomed to the valuations that they will annex, or the multiple that they'll give some of these businesses based on globalizations and efforts to expand overseas and internationally. Now, this international conflict has created a flashpoint for globalization, even if you are just cutting off one country that is doing the worst, as many of the companies have called out in condemnation of their particular movements to get out of any type of ties to Russia at this point.
Right. And so when you start to ask what is happening with globalization writ large, you have to ask yourself, does it end with Russia? I mean, there's all kinds of analysis of what does this mean for China in the foreign policy press, among trade people, and especially with regard to what China might do about Taiwan, which in some ways is analogous to Ukraine's position with regard to Russia. So, I think this is why we're seeing stocks, very uncomfortable with what's happening right now. And one of the things that everybody in the market is trying to figure out is, where does this end in terms of the financial damage and the economic carnage? Is it contained? And is it a really small chunk of the global markets, which is to say Russia? Is this a permanent decline in the size of the global market because Russia's out of it for 5 or 10 years, or can this somehow be put back together? This is why we're seeing so much volatility right now, in addition to what's happening with oil prices. because there's a repricing going on, especially for these companies that really have done so well in the global economy for the last 20 to 25 years. Suddenly, the prospects are a little cloudy, and it's going to take some time to figure out where this all ends up.